Welcome to the tutorial about the forEach method on arrays in JavaScript. So we'll be talking about when to use forEach, what is forEach, how does it work. It has a weird syntax. Some of you might think you probably have seen it before, but you're not super comfortable using it on your own, so you're using the standard for loop instead, or for off loop. So we'll compare them all and make sure you understand everything and when to use which loop. So we'll start off with creating this simple array containing names, and we'll work with this one, and our mission or goal is to print out all the names in the array, right? So there's so many ways to do this, and we'll go through them all and compare. The first one most of you are familiar with is the let I equal 0, I is less than array.length, and I plus plus, and then we console log our array at index I. So this one works fine, right? Why should you learn forEach? Everyone knows this loop. Well, I would argue with that on that it is kind of bloated, right? There's too much code and declarations and comparisons in here that even though we're 100 or 99% sure of what it does, we need to add some computational power from our brain extra here to double check that. Is it equal or less than length? Is it +1 or +2? We double check, and yeah, probably a standard forEach. So yeah, I don't know. Here, when we're just going through each item in an array, we might use the for off loop instead. So the for, let's say, item of our array, we will console.log the item, right? Let's see here. I'll just add a divider here, like that. So it's the exactly same, this one. And it's a little bit cleaner when we just need to print out or do something for each, not print, do something for each element in an array. And here you cannot be mistaken on where to start, when, how much to increment. This one, we understand it right away what it does. And when we have these kinds of operations to do, I would say that forEach is perfect. Like, I will show you how it looks like, and we will compare them all here. So I'll add this divider as well. So how does it work? Well, on all the arrays we can find, hopefully here, forEach. There's a built-in method on all the arrays, and it expects a function, right? What should it do for each element? So we can create a function here. Let's call it, I don't know, our function. And then we pass it as expected. And now what? Well, what forEach does is we pass our function to it, and it's called a callback function, right? So forEach will execute our function inside and pass in each element one by one, right? So we will have access to the element. So we will have access to them. Here we can call this whatever we want, L, item, I don't know. Let's be consistent and call it item. So now let's try to console.log the item and see if it works. And here we are. It works perfectly fine. And now you might think, well, geez, should I create the function just to do something for each item and then pass that function to forEach? Well, the beauty of this forEach is that you necessarily don't need to do it this way. So I'll comment it out. We can create a function inside here, right? It will be much more clearer. So let's say we passed a function that accepted one parameter, and then we did something. So we'll create a function inside here. I'll do an error function, item, and then do something. And we want to console.log the item. And now, now if we take a look and inspect this beautiful row, this is super clear, I would say. And I bet you all would say that as well. So array for each item, we console log the item. I mean, it cannot be clearer. And this is, yeah, if we compare this old verbose for loop with this one, I think this one wins. But now you might say, hey, on the standard for loop, we have full control, we have access to the index, we can increment it how much we want, we can decrement it, we know the position in the array we're at, so we can save it for later, we can do computations depending on what index we're at, and we cannot do it in a forEach. Well, the first answer is yes, fine, use this one. This forEach is not suited for every type of loop, right? So it's super good that we have all kinds of loops. But forEach, I said it will execute the function we pass, and it will send in two how do you say, two parameters, right? It doesn't just send in the pass in the element, it will also pass the index we're at. So if we print out our index, so our item and the index, you see we have access to the index just like the standard for loop. And now you might think, well, should I need to create the function first if I need to do something more than one row? Maybe have an if-else statement, or maybe do a lot of stuff, head out to an API, get the result, transform it, etc. No, you necessarily don't need to create the function. You can do it inline as well. So if we have more than one row, of course we create the function, the parameters, and then we add the brackets. And now we have how many rows we want to do something, right? Do something. And we have access to the item and the index. And now it looks more like this, but we have a very declarative header on top of it, right? But still, I would say that the for loop suits some cases better, right? So I'm just doing this to open up some minds and not always go with these two loops, because writing your code to be easily readable by other programmers are super important. And I mean, it could be very much more appreciated to write it readable than super optimized, right? So yeah, I don't know if we need a little bit to recap, but these two, they're not the focus of this tutorial. It's the forEach. So either you create the function where you accept an item, and if you want also the index. You don't need to. Often it's just the item and you want to do something based on the value. But this one, this syntax is, I mean, the easiest one, right? You just take your array for each, set up if you want the item or item and index, and then add the block and do whatever you want here. So Thank you for watching. I hope you understand when and why to use forEach and when and why to use the other for loops. And thank you for watching. Bye.